Superintendent Central Illinois, WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. Mr. Fred Lamkey is the superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools. Joins us on the phone today. Mr. Lamkey, how are you, sir?
We're doing very good. It's kind of dreary, rainy day.
It is a dreary, rainy day. It is. You are not wrong, my friend. Hopefully, though, it's short-lived and we get that sunshine back here in central Illinois and get back on with our fall season. Mr. Lamkey, though, I know you're excited about this. We were talking before we got started. I could hear the excitement in your voice. You are presenting to the State Board of Education about your district's shared leadership plan and what that looks like, why it's important. What's going on here? What's going on? Tell me about it.
Well, I tell you, we just held a dinner meeting for the Illinois Association of School Boards, Abe Lincoln region, and at that dinner meeting, we had schools from across central Illinois come to the building, and it's just an informative meeting where the Illinois Association of School Boards gets to meet and talk with different school board members and superintendents from across the central Illinois, and then also they needed a presentation. They said, "Can you guys present?" And I said, "Well, sure, we can present," and we did this on shared leadership. Because that's really, it's the bottom basis for everything that we do at Mount Pulaski and how we develop our system. And so we were able to kind of put that together. And in the middle of it all, we were asked to go up the school board conference, the joint conference in Chicago, and present on it there. So that's been very interesting for me. It's been, like I said, it's kind of been the center of my leadership style since I've been a superintendent the last 9 years. And it's been real enjoyable to put this together and actually collaborate with my board and my administration and teachers to do it. So it's been a real nice gig.
So shared leadership, what does that mean? And what does that look like? How do it sounds like a holistic approach to leadership, but I'm sure it's more, there's more to it than that. So how about that?
Yeah, it really is holistic. And the idea is that, for years and years and years, and really across even the business sector, that it's always been top-down leadership. You have somebody making the decisions on top and telling everybody below how you make those decisions. In shared leadership, you still retain the decision-making ability at the highest level. When it comes down to having to make an important decision, it's myself, the board, the principals. We're making those tough decisions. But I think the biggest thing I try to recognize out of this is that when I walk into a room, I never assume I'm the smartest person. And I think that's really what the approach is all about. That when you're working with people, you have to know there are talents and skills amongst you. And if you spend all your time talking and telling people what to do, you're not listening enough and giving people enough time to shine and take leadership roles and help you make decisions in your district.
So, Mr. Lamkey, as you allow your people to do that, does it have a trickle-down effect where more people are empowered and they're it sounds like you might get to a point where you have like the old adage, too many chiefs, not enough Indians type of a thing. How about that?
No, and that's why you have to have the oversight by administration, and it's a systemic approach where I know we've talked about on the show before, Seth, about our building leadership team, where we have a representative group of teachers that meet monthly with our administrators, and what they're doing is they're facilitating our school improvement plan, but at the same time, they're also looking for what problems that are happening in the building. And if you don't have the systems in place for that information to get to an administrator, these things can fester and become huge problems. So along with taking care of like our instructional plans, our curriculum, and how we do professional development, which are all parts of the building leadership team, you're also taking looks at the little things that are important to teachers. Maybe it just comes down to technology isn't working very well. We've got to get on top of that. It could be that there are just different things happening in the building that an administrator normally wouldn't hear. But the way it doesn't get out of control is the oversight of strong administrators on top of it. And the system works to allow them to have that oversight. So it's a structure that you put in place. But you're right, you have to have somebody driving that car. You can't just let it run down the road by itself.
Well, and it sounds like, Mr. Lamkey, I don't know if you're of a religious background, and we don't have to talk about that. I'm just saying, like, it sounds like the old, you walk into a church and you see an issue, and I can't remember, there was like some pastor that was like, well, if you come to me and you see an issue in the church, I'm going to put you in charge of solving it, type of a thing. That's what this sounds like a little bit.
It does, and what happens is it allows you to develop leaders out of where they otherwise wouldn't have a chance to evolve. I know I can tell you specifically, I had a teacher that worked for me when I was a principal, and she lacked self-esteem, but she's incredibly talented. She's awesome with kids, and she ended up becoming a really good teacher. And then I told her, I said, you've got leadership qualities. It was hard to get her to believe that. She became an instructional coach within our systems. Why? Because we had that shared leadership that allowed her to rise up to where her strengths were. And I started telling her, you've got to be a principal one day. And she's like, oh, I can't be a principal. And right now she's the principal at Mount Zion Grade School. But it was the opportunity through that shared leadership that she just slowly kept taking steps forward and realizing that she did have the ability to do it. And also from my perspective, I found out that she could do those things too. Otherwise, I'm making all the decisions. I never know I've got a leader in my building. And to me, that's the premise of shared leadership, is finding out where your strengths are in your building and utilizing them.
Yeah. So while shared leadership kind of has this sound and maybe a connotation of like you have, all these people leading different places and, like you said, it sounds like it get overbearing and too many people in a leadership position and not enough people to, to carry out what those leaders are. It's really just about discovering the strengths of your staff is more of what it sounds like than anything else, I feel like.
Yeah, it's really opening doors. Yeah, to find out where this is at. And the other thing is too, like if I'm the leader and I'm sitting on top and I'm making all the decisions, people will half-heartedly fall to that because I'm the boss and they're going to do what I tell them to do, but they may not really believe in it. But if you give the people working with the ability to have a say in what's going on and take leadership roles and ownership in what you're doing, they're going to work so much harder at accomplishing that and moving forward. And to me, that's one of the biggest pieces about it is empowering our staff and trusting our staff. And sometimes that means letting them make mistakes along with their successes. Because, Seth, I don't know about your life, but I've learned some of my best lessons from the things I've done wrong. And I think you've got to be trusting to allow that to happen.
I would joke and say I've never done anything wrong. But, people that listen to this show all the time know that is absolutely not the case. So, but in all seriousness, again, Fred Lamkey, superintendent of Mount Pulaski School, is our guest on the phone today. So you're presenting this to the State Board of Education. You've talked a little bit about it already. So what is your message? How do you teach this to other districts? How do you give them the tools to implement this where they're at?
You do it one step at a time, because in part of the presentation, we talk about how overwhelming it can look at, like, how could we do all these things? And it all starts off simply with strategic planning. And in that, 5 years ago, we brought our school district and community together, and we just asked the simple questions: what is important to our school district? And then we got this template for what we valued at Mount Pulaski. And then from that, the next step was we found the leaders, people who wanted to be leaders in our building. There's actually an application process. Who wants to be on this building leadership team at the high school and grade school? And then they took that strategic plan and they together created a district plan. This is what we need to do as a district. And then that district plan informed the school improvement plan. And it sounds like, my gosh, there's so many steps in this process. But as long as you focus on the next step and get it done, it really unfolds itself. And it really kind of takes a life of its own. And again, it's inherent that you have good leadership. They just kind of keep it in bounds, that you're allowing them to have enough rope to run with it, but you're not letting people get in trouble or get off task or go the wrong direction. So, and I'm very lucky to have two outstanding principals at the high school, Heather Fricky, and at the grade school, we have Danielle Lohr. They're just outstanding.
Well, Mr. Lamkey, I know you're retiring at the end of this year. So how do you carry this on in your building? How do you pass this on to your predecessor?
But the hope is that you've established systems that can carry on in your absence. And you have strong enough principals and the teachers believe in it, that it's something they wanted to know. But the other piece of it is informing my board. And the board's been able to see this over the past 3 years, the improvements that we've made and the strength we have in the district. And so we start the interviewing process this Saturday for my replacement. And I know a focal point of the board is asking questions about, we're already doing these things. How can you make this better? How can you help they're not looking to reinvent the wheel again. We want to be able to come in and maintain some systems, but at the same time, understand and take the strength and philosophy of the new superintendent to come in and make things better. So that's going to all be a part of that process. And it could be a little tricky depending on who your candidates are and what their strengths are. But I think I know our Board of Education has that in mind as they're looking for a successor for me.
Sure. Very good. Well, Mr. Lamkey, anything on this topic we have not touched on yet that you want to put out there for us?
No, I think the big thing is, like in this presentation, we've got all of our staff involved. Our teachers, our instructional coaches, our administrators, our board members. We can't take them all up to the conference in Chicago in November, but we got video pieces of them talking about the strength and how it works for our district. Because I don't want people listening to me telling you how this works so well. I want the people who are actually doing it to say, this is why I like it, this is why it works. So it's been a real collaborative piece for us, and we're real proud of it.
Mr. Lamkey, let's take a break here, my friend. Come back with some more. Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools, my guest on the phone. More to come with him on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.
OLI.org. Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Corn steady, beans lower, wheat trading slightly higher. December corn $4.93 up 1 1/4. March corn down half a penny, 5.06. May corn 5.13 1/2 down a penny. November beans 13.03 3/4 down 7 1/4. January beans 13.20 3/4 down 8 1/2. March beans down 8 3/4. 13.31 1/4. December wheat 5.83 3/4 up 3 1/2. March wheat up 2, 6.10. December bean meal 413.50 down 30 cents. December bean oil 53.95 down 91 cents. Livestock market at this hour: October feeders 246.37 down 75 cents. October live cattle 185.67 down a nickel. December lean hogs 69.40 up $1.37. Energy market at this hour: November crude oil 87.56 down 76 cents. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio.
Looking for new Buick inventory? This is Scott Baum from Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton. We have Buick inventory in stock and inbound. Many models to choose from, like the Buick GX, the Buick Envision, and the Buick Enclave. This month, take advantage of $1,000 trade assistance plus an extra $500 for Friends of Ag, all on new Buicks. Come see our staff for details. BaumChevyBuick.com. Right from the start.
For the latest in Central Illinois agricultural news, visit IllinoisFarmRadio.com. Get updated information on markets, weather, ag news, local interviews with NAFB farm broadcaster Jared White, and much, much more. All at IllinoisFarmRadio.com.
Connexus will provide local, reliable, affordable, and speed-of-light fiber internet to Clinton. Get on the install list now by clicking the Connexus icon at DeWittDailyNews.com. Fiber internet is coming to Clinton. Get on the install list now.
Your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Once again, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Again, my guest on the phone today, Mr. Fred Lamkey, is the superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools. And, you know, Mr. Lamkey, you mentioned there in passing in that first segment, you're going to begin that superintendent interview process on Saturday and get some folks in to hear about their thoughts and where they would take Mount Pulaski Schools. And this is probably a good time, Mr. Lamkey, to reflect on what you've done at Mount Pulaski Schools and the things you've been able to accomplish. What is this, year 5 or 6 for you? I'm trying to remember now.
This is year 5 for me.
Yeah, year 5, sure. So, you know, and COVID probably puts a wrench in a lot of the things you could have accomplished and, you know, just trying to manage through that whole situation. But your thoughts on just the things you've done in Mount Pulaski that your predecessor is going to have to take on as they step into that role. How about that?
Yeah, well, first, I haven't done anything by myself in Mount Pulaski. I've been very fortunate to have a great board to work with and incredible office staff. And then, again, my administrators going all the way back from Gene Newton and Terry at the high school. They were here my first 2 years to bringing into Danielle and Heather now. It's been I've just been very fortunate. But we've done a lot at Mount Pulaski. You know, we've done over $20 million in improvements to our school buildings in our district. I'm very proud of that. That was done during the middle of COVID, which we came in under budget and got it done early. And again, that wasn't the work of me. That was the work of everybody we collaborated with. It was awesome. And you're right, the pandemic did really kind of put a hitch in everybody's get along. But I was real proud of the work. We still managed to develop our school improvement planning process and our building leadership teams through the pandemic. So while we're trying to figure out how to teach kids remotely and how we're trying to do things a new way, my building leadership teams were still figuring out how do we improve and how do we make our district better. And we built those systems in place that lead right onto that shared leadership conversation we had earlier. And I'm exceptionally proud of our staff and how they've worked for that. We have such good teachers that care so much about kids here, and they're willing to do more, and they're willing to do the extra. And I've been also impressed with the leaders that have stepped forward in that time. I've seen really good growth in people. Those are probably the things I'm most proud of what we've done. But again, Fred Lamkey hasn't done anything. It's been the work of everybody in the district working together. If they don't do it, we don't accomplish anything.
Yeah. You know, and it's sometimes you don't want to, highlight the challenges or the things that are facing a district. I mean, a lot of superintendents want to speak well of their schools, and rightfully so. I mean, should be proud of what you're doing and, put as much positivity and things in good light as you can. But what are some things that the next superintendent is stepping into that you look at and say, this it not necessarily be a bad thing or an issue, but it's like, you're going to have to think about this challenge that's coming our way, or this is coming down the line, and maybe be something to think about in the next 5 years or something like that. Does anything come to mind for you there, Mr. Lamkey?
Well, I go back into my my 34 years in education, and I can't ever recall being busier any other district than I was at Mount Pulaski because of the place we are for our growth of our facilities. So when I stepped in, I hit the ground running. The first thing I saw was the high school be torn down in 2019 in June because we were starting construction at a new high school. A new superintendent coming in or being handed immediately this summer, a $1.5 million renovation to our high school. And not in the not so distant future, we're going to be looking at improvements, renovations, and even the building possibly at our grade school. As we have a 1950, 1972 school building that is ready for some upgrades and some improvements. We're just finished the purchase of Veterans Park in Mount Pulaski, where we play our baseball and have our track facility, and we're going to be doing upgrades on that in the future. So whoever comes in is going to have to not only balance the time between how do we create a really strong instructional school and how do we support our school improvement planning, but how do we also grow our infrastructure, and it's going to make a busy job. Now, when I took the job at Mount Pulaski, I knew that construction project was there, and that excited me because I wanted that challenge. I wanted to be a part of building a new facility. And if you've been by our high school or you've been in it, it's just an outstanding facility. And we've been putting finishing touches on it this last year. And again, just very proud of what we did with that. But you're going to have to be a multitasker coming in. Be ready to hit the ground running. The normal school years I've had in the past, you didn't. I mean, maybe there were 3 or 4 years that you had a major construction project, but since I've been at Mount Pulaski, every year there's been a major project. So they got to be ready to balance that.
Well, those are the types of things you want to keep your attention and keep you busy. A lot of some of the other things not necessarily so, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have to spend time on something, building these facilities and making these improved classroom situations, it's a point of pride for the community and our students. Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun busy. It truly is.
Well, Mr. Lamkey, as we continue to talk here for this morning, what's your board been focused on? I know we've talked in the past about some facility things. Obviously, they're trying to find your replacement going forward as well. Anything else been on your board's radar or your radar that is occupying your attention and their attention lately?
Well, I tell you, my board deserves a pat on the back for the year they've had. We spent the entire spring in negotiations with a union. We came up with a great contract that took care of our teachers and allows us to push forward for 3 more years. And that was a big task. We've Mount Pulaski, if you go back 10 or 12 years, we just didn't have the money to get to our teachers like we would have wanted to. And now that we're in a spot that our revenues are increasing because of our EAB going up, that we were able to get the teachers a good contract. And then coming in, working all this summer on the superintendent search, and that started back in June. And it's taken up a lot of the time of our board. Every meeting is an executive session in the process of their selection and what they're doing with that. So they've been really working hard at those things. And in the middle of all of it, attending to the normal things of a school year. So as I talked about, a superintendent being very busy with the extra projects, our board has been very busy with these projects as well. Last night's meeting right at an hour long, and I couldn't tell you the last time we had an hour-long board meeting just because we've always had so much.
Well, Mr. Lamkey, I feel like you're describing a dream job for somebody out there.
I truly think it is. You have resources here. You have outstanding administration and teachers to work with, and not to mention our support staff. And then you got a great board of education who's well thought out. They love this community. I mean, if I have struggles sometimes, it's because they love this community so much, and they've got such a specific vision for it that we have to work through to make sure we're making good decisions. And they always get there. They are always there.
Sure.
So yeah, it's going to be a position that somebody's going to be very fortunate to walk into.
How are your fall extracurriculars going?
They're going well. Our volleyball season's just finishing up here. We had a really young team. We graduated a strong senior class last year. They're headed into regionals next week at Delavan, and tonight is the final home game. The golf team, we had more golfers golfing this year than ever before. They're going to have their sectional meet coming up here pretty quickly. We're getting ready to kick off our high school girls basketball in a week, and then 2 weeks after that, the boys basketball team. So we're looking for continued, winning traditions coming up there. And our junior high girls, right, they're on a good run in the basketball program. We've got a really nice 7th and 8th grade team. We're hoping we can get both of them out of regional sectionals this year. So, Mount Pulaski, we're still doing really well with our athletics, and it's always a pleasure to watch them play. We have good athletes here.
Mr. Lamkey, what's kind of coming up next for those sports? I know, I think next time you and I talk, we'll have basketball. The basketballs will be out. The shots will be put up for the hoops and all that good stuff. The winter sports season will be here before we know it. What's next for Mount Pulaski schools?
Well, we host the Bill Ruck's Thanksgiving tournament every year, which is a busy week. But that's a nice tournament we play to start off the school year. I know that our girls team is playing in a new tournament this year. They're going over to the Maroa Forsyth pre-Thanksgiving tournament, and I know we're really excited about that. But yeah, it's going to get busy in a hurry, and it's kind of a funny thing that by the time basketball season starts, it just seems like the winter just goes away in a snap. It just, because you're so busy with the sports and the other activities and the holidays, it really makes for a fast slide going into spring.
Very good. Well, Mr. Lamkey, again, where do folks go to learn about all things Mount Pulaski schools?
Well, again, we've got an outstanding webpage, which you can get at www.mountpulaski.k12.il.us. You can also find us on Facebook. If you search Mount Pulaski High School, Mount Pulaski Grade School, you can find out all things Mount Pulaski in those places. And Trent Kappelman, our athletic director, has a really good Twitter account going, and you can reach him at MPATHDIR, Mount Pulaski Athletic Director, and he'll keep you up to date on our schedules, our seasons, and how all of our student athletes are doing.
What is Trent's Twitter? I'm searching now, Mr. Lamkey.
Okay, it's a capital M, capital P, big A, small TH, big DIR. So it's MP App Directory with App DIR.
I am following him already. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Lamkey, I got to let you go, my good man. Thank you for making time for us. As always, Fred Lamkey, Superintendent of Mount Pulaski Schools.
WHOW.